I want to start by noting that we are providing translation service tonight's presentation in both Spanish and Polish. Please click the interpretation icon if you need translation services. To kick off the presentation, I want to share a short video prepared by the Alderman's office.
Hello, everyone. I am Ariel Reboers, the 30th Ward Alderman. The site you are viewing, called the Belmont Triangle, bordered by Milwaukee, Pulaski, and Belmont. The site is privately owned, approximately 4 acres in size, and was identified a few years ago during a walkthrough with Commissioner Cox from the Department of Planning and Development. The objective here is to redevelop this disconnected site in proximity to other underutilized property in the area with a mixed-use development. I want to hear from all of you who reside and visit this community. Thanks to the business partners who joined in to lead this process in a previous presentation. I especially want to thank Mayor Lightfoot, Commissioner Cox, and his team, Carmen Martinez and James Harris, for this opportunity, and thanks to the associates, can enjoy on a daily basis and stores where you can walk to shop. Thank you again for this opportunity, and please don't forget to join us on the presentation on Thursday, April 28, 2022 at 6 p.m. Register to log onto the meeting. Please call my office at 773-794-3095 for further information. Thank you and enjoy.
Okay, now let's get into some introductions. First, I want to introduce Alderman Reboers, who has been instrumental in bringing this project to fruition. I'll turn it over to you, Alderman, for a few words.
Thank you, James. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for taking the time to be with us this evening. As I said earlier in that short video presentation, I'm very grateful to the Mayor Lightfoot, Commissioner Cox, and his staff, Carmen Martinez and James Harris, for this evening's presentation. Here this evening, we have an opportunity to listen to the presentation, follow the rules identified before you, use the raise your hand function, be respectful to others, and present your opinions. I'm eager and excited to hear your thoughts on this project. I want to thank you again. Can I say that in Spanish?
Yes, please.
Okay. Buenas tardes a todos. Yo soy el Ariel Reboera, el concejal del Distrito 30. Bienvenidos. Gracias a todos los que se encuentran presentes. En el video que se presentó, yo estoy muy agradecido a nuestra alcaldesa Lightfoot, al comisionado Cox, sus empleados Carmen Martínez y James Harris por esta presentación. Tenemos la oportunidad para escuchar la presentación, a seguir las reglas identificadas, a utilizar la función de levantar la mano, ser respetuoso con los demás y finalmente presentar su opinión. Estoy muy ansioso y emocionado de escuchar su pensamientos sobre este proyecto. Muchísimas gracias y vamos para adelante. Thank you.
Thank you. On the department side, we're joined by Carmen Martinez. Carmen, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Carmen Martinez, the Department of Planning and Development. I also am a lead coordinating planner for the Northwest region. I'm really excited to start this project with you.
And Commissioner Cox is also joining us today. Commissioner.
Thank you, James, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. This evening starts the beginning of an unprecedented opportunity to revitalize one of the most significant development sites on the Northwest side. As many of you know, the Belmont Triangle has long been a center for Avondale's commercial life and vitality, but today this triangle is underutilized. So the visioning process that we're kicking off tonight will help us ensure that the future redevelopment reflects the community's goals for these three major commercial corridors. I want to thank firstly Alderman Reboers for his leadership and partnership in making this process possible for everyone that either lives, works, or goes to school nearby. I also want to thank the Belmont Triangle property owners for partnering with the city and for partnering with the community to drive the vision of this site for the future. I also would love to acknowledge and thank my staff from the Department of Planning and Development, which will be coordinating the envisioning process into the summer, when we expect to issue a request for proposals to redevelop one or more portions of the block with a series of preferred uses. And it should be made clear that the city doesn't own any land here. But we have extensive experience now working with communities and property owners to envision the future. Also to issue requests for proposals for private land that have produced fantastic results in other parts of the city. We are currently seeing the Pioneer Bank in Humboldt Park and the adjacent parking lot next to it be redeveloped. The Laramie State Bank in Austin and the adjacent land next to it, and multiple other locations in South Chicago, South Shore, Auburn, Gresham, and beyond. So we have enormous confidence of what we can achieve here at the Belmont Triangle. So for the Belmont Triangle, I think the process will include the services of Juan Moreno or Juan Gabriel Moreno Architects and Design Workshop and other partners who are part of the Chicago Central Area Committee team that will help us realize multiple visions for the entire block, which will help ensure that the future construction actually reflects community's goals and needs. So we've got a lot to work with here, and we've got a lot of work to do. So just in closing, I just want to, again, thank Alderman Rebollas for his leadership and everyone else for joining us on this journey together. Thank you, and James, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Commissioners. As the Commissioner mentioned, we do have an excellent slate of pro bono partners assisting us with this project, including Burns and Walsh, the Central Area Committee, Chicago Title Insurance Design Workshop, HNTB, JGMA, and the Near North Title Group. On the line, we do have Mark Hopkins from the Chicago Central Area Committee. I'm going to allow Mark an opportunity to say a few words, and then I'm going to turn it over to Luke Mitch, who is also joining us from Design Workshop.
James, good evening, everybody. See, we have hundreds of people here with us. That's great news. I'm Mark Hopkins.
Go ahead.
As you heard, the Chicago Central Area Committee. For those of you unfamiliar with us, we've been around since 1956. We've helped the city and the mayor's office planning and development with some of the larger kind of long-term projects the city has been involved with from a development perspective, starting with the North Loop Redevelopment Project, and then coming all the way through to Invest Southwest, and now this project here on the Northwest side. I want to congratulate your alderman in the 30th Ward for identifying this parcel and thinking about how the process that was developed mostly by Commissioner Cox and his team at DPD would be applicable to this particular site. And it's to me, one of those brilliant things that comes from a successful program where others in the city think about how it would work in neighborhoods where it isn't currently being applied. So we were able to put together the pro bono team from our membership, and the team is actually raring to go. I know we've had several calls about it already, and people are ready to start. So we're excited to get started, and we're excited to see the process. And for those of you thinking about what's the timeline, it is pretty rapid. We are going to do this in what we call a sprint, where we're going to run quickly, and we will have some interesting things to talk about in the very near future, get great input from the people who are involved in the community, live there, work there, shop there, and then get you hopefully a great product where we'll see cranes starting soon. I think that's all our goal. So that's for me, and you'll hear from Luke Mitch in a second, who's one of our co-team leaders from Design Workshop.
Thanks, Mark.
Great, Luke.
Good evening, everyone. Hi there. I'm Luke Mish. I'm an urban planner here at Design Workshop. We are a national urban planning, urban design, and landscape architecture firm with an office here in Chicago. Excited to work on this project. As James and Mark have noted, the team you see represented with the logos here on the screen. We are all engaged in this in a pro bono volunteer effort. We are excited to support the department in pulling together your thoughts in understanding the development potential here for the site and helping to pull together a vision for what can come here at the Belmont Triangle. You'll hear a lot more about us and about others on the team in future sessions as we begin to kind of lay out some of the existing conditions of the site and start to build that vision. But for now, I'll just leave it with saying, very excited to be part of this and to work with you all to envision the future of the Belmont Triangle.
Thank you, Luke. So I do want to review some ground rules before we start. Participants will be muted during the presentation, and the chat function has been disabled. Therefore, if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A function. We will try to respond to each question. And as I mentioned earlier, we will have a formal Q&A session at the end of the presentation. During the Q&A session, we ask that you use the raise your hand function to be unmuted. And when speaking, we ask that you state your name and the community you live in. Lastly, we ask that you be respectful of others during the comment period. So now we're going to transition into the project overview. So as shown here in the aerial, the RFP site is generally located at the northeast corner of Pulaski and Belmont. The site is approximately 4 acres. And as mentioned in the video, the department identified the site for redevelopment with the assistance of Alderman Rivores. We initially toured this site with the Alderman in late 2020 and selected the site for a number of reasons, including its adjacency to economically disconnected areas and underutilized property along the adjacent commercial corridors. I do want to mention again that these properties are currently privately owned, and we are issuing this RFP in partnership with the property owners. And I want to echo the commissioner in thanking the property owners for their willing participation in this process. Moving on to the community context. Just to review some top line community indicators, Avondale has a total population of 37,909 folks, a median income of 66,130, an owner occupancy rate of 41.2%, a housing vacancy rate of 11.5%, and park access of 0.84 acres per 1,000 residents. And as you can see, these indicators are comparable to citywide indicators. Diving deeper into the demographic data, we see that the majority of the community is Latino and nearly half are Spanish speakers. There's also a significant population of Polish speakers. Over 30% of the community holds a post-secondary degree, and the community's median age is 32.9, with over half of the community being between the ages of 20 and 49. Looking at the housing data, we see that the majority of housing is family housing, with the majority of occupants being renters. I do want to note that the site is located within a community preservation area, which are areas of the city that are experiencing significant residential displacement pressures, as demonstrated through changes in demographic and housing data. Moving into site context. Here are some context photos depicting the site from various locations. Looking at the aerial again, you can see that the site is bound by Milwaukee to the east, Belmont to the south, and Pulaski to the west. The site is largely vacant with the exception of 2 active businesses, which include a gas station and an auto repair shop. This is a context map showing the site in relation to various community assets such as historic buildings, educational facilities, and open space. Also included in this map in gray are businesses that we previously engaged through the Alderman's office. And as you can see, there are several existing community assets within a half mile of the site that we hope to leverage through this project. So getting into what is an RFP. An RFP is a tool that we use to solicit proposals for sites in areas of the city where we are focusing redevelopment efforts. In the past, RFPs generally included basic information about sites and preferred uses. With the Invest Southwest initiative, we've elevated our usage of RFPs by also including a redevelopment vision that is created in partnership with the community through robust engagement and outreach. RFPs are not plans. They are simply tools that we use to encourage development and guide urban design for selected sites. It's also important to note that responding developers will propose their own designs, and there will be opportunity for community to review those proposals at a later date. Using this model to date, the city has issued multiple RFPs under the Invest Southwest banner. Here are 6 examples of resulting redevelopment proposals, as the commissioner mentioned earlier. One RFP we issued is of a similar scale, is located in North Avondale and on Ogden Avenue. This RFP resulted in a $31.4 million redevelopment of this formerly or currently vacant site.
James, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Our interpreter is raising her hand. Martha?
Oh, okay, sorry.
I think that may have been accidental. I'll follow up with her. So James, you can keep going.
Okay. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, this RFP has resulted in a $31.4 million redevelopment proposal of the site consisting of 63 housing units and 14,000 square feet of commercial space. This development will include amenities such as a small scale grocery store and a community center, in addition to public open space. The process that we took to selecting an ultimate developer for this site included a community visioning session, which resulted in 3 distinct community preferred development schemes. And those development schemes were included in the RFP, which guided developers' responses. As a result, we received 6 variant proposals, and it should be mentioned that one of the goals of the RFP process is to foster competition among developers to ensure that we receive the best outcome in terms of development proposals that are aligned with community preferences and are also financially feasible. Throughout the process, we emphasized the importance of urban design and applied 6 principles of design excellence, including sustainability, programming, site design, public realm improvements, massing, building massing, and facade treatments. As a result of our effort in North Avondale, we saw 3 additional proposals on adjacent vacant lots, which total a total investment of $130 million. And here are some sites that we anticipate could see investment adjacent to the site. And when we say investment, we don't necessarily strictly mean redevelopment. Reinvestment could also include new public amenities, rehab of existing buildings, new business locations, and other public and private investments. And finally, I just want to talk about the process and timeline. So here is a process map outlining the steps to complete an RFP. We're currently in the outreach and engagement phase, and today's meeting is the first of 3 engagement events we are conducting during this phase of the project. The next engagement opportunity will be a community visioning session, which we're targeting for the end of May. Details for that meeting will be published on the project's website in the coming days, as well as a community preference survey, where we will collect additional feedback from community members to be able to weigh in on this, on the development of this site. It should be noted that after the community engagement process, there will be additional opportunities to engage. Once we receive proposals, we will allow input from the community, and once we select an ultimate developer, there will be additional engagement. And then here's a timeline in more detail. As you can see here, we will be wrapping up the initial engagement phase at the end of June and hope to release the RFP shortly after. We anticipate receiving responses back in the late summer and making an ultimate selection towards the end of the year. As I mentioned, our next engagement event will be the visioning session, which we're currently targeting again at the end of May. And again, more information will be provided. So before we close out and get into questions, I do want to capture some feedback about the site and community. So I did put together an opportunity for us to create a word cloud. So the first question for the word cloud is, what are 3 words that would describe the Avondale community? You can submit your responses by using the QR code seen here on the screen, or going to menti.com and using the code 28202259 to submit your responses. So I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to navigate to the website and enter responses, and we should see a word cloud generated.
Was there?
I'll give it another minute. Okay, it looks like that might be it in terms of responses. So we'll move on to the next question. Oh, they're all coming in at once. All right, well, it looks like that worked better than I expected. So I'm glad to see so many responses. So yeah, I'll give it a little bit more time. All right, I think we'll move on to the second question. You still feel free to respond if you haven't submitted responses to the first question. I think that the information is included in the chat. So our second question is, is what are 3 words you would use to describe the potential of the Belmont Triangle site? And again, please use the QR code shown here or navigate to menti.com and use the code 28396698. All right, looks like we got about 52 responses. Looks like a lot of people are hoping to see green space, some housing, community center, garden. They want this to be a destination for the community. Okay, so the results of this work file will be included on our project website. So with that, we'll move into the Q&A session.
Great. So I think we'll just start with some of the questions that are already in the Q&A box. Just going to the first one at the top, William mentions, is this under the Invest Southwest initiative? So I don't know, James or Carmen, if you want to take that.
So this is not officially under the Invest Southwest initiative. This is us exporting the lessons that we've learned from those RFPs to other areas of the city. And we do have the commissioner on, so I don't know, Commissioner, if you wanted to add to that.
No, I thought you capitalized that well. We know that the input of community before you solicit proposals from the developer makes for a better result. That's one of the lessons we're applying it. And when you want to have a community consensus around a vision so that the developer knows how to respond in a way that's sensitive to a community's sense of themselves. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think there's a couple of questions here that are just interested in, how is this process going to go forward? And, what type of development will go? Is it going to be green space, restaurants, that type of thing? So I don't know if Mark or James, if you want to just take through, what's to come after this meeting so that, how involved the community will be.
Yeah, so in terms of, I see some folks are asking about if there's a proposed plan and the process to arriving at a plan. So like I mentioned earlier, we are in the community engagement phase of this RFP process. And what we're hoping to gain from this is a community-led vision for the development of this site. So really what that means is that the community is going to be able to inform the types of proposals that we receive. And as I mentioned before, the proposals that we receive are going to be varied in terms of the submissions that we receive from developers, but they should be in line with the community's vision as we create it together through this visioning session.
Thanks. Julio was asking, thank you for putting the presentation together. And how much is available for developers in the form of TIF, or will developers be allowed to apply for property tax incentives or other financial incentives?
I think that that's really going to be dependent upon the types of proposals that we receive. So typically, when we receive a proposal, they come with a pro forma, and we'll be able to evaluate the types of incentives that are available at that point.
Thanks. There's a question about, how much priority will be given to park space, given that there's a list of that in the community. And also, what types of building height do you foresee at this point?
Yeah, so again, I think in terms of the priority that's given to park space, that's really going to be a result of the vision that we create through the visioning session. So really, it's gonna be dependent on that. So I can't really say whether or not that will be prioritized. It's something that we certainly want through the principles of the design excellence and neighborhood design guideline, but it's really going to be dependent upon the vision that we create with the community during the visioning session.
There's a few questions that are coming up. Go ahead.
I think, I don't know if Gerardo would like to answer about the public space component. I know that every single proposal that we received in the Invest Southwest commissions expanded significantly the public space, the public realm. And this site, given its size and given its centrality to the community, it's our expectation that if the community is asking for a central place, that we would fold that into the requirements for the developer to respond to.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I think the other thing that I would add to that, just given some of the questions that we're seeing in the chat here, is this is really about exporting some of the lessons learned from our Invest Southwest RFPs. And those projects in Invest Southwest that have been successful have been ones where developers have been able to balance community desires with financial feasibility, and really being able to meet the vision that the community put together as part of the visioning process. So I think a lot of the questions around specific uses and around how they fit together on the site and how that translates into an actual vision, architectural in terms of building mass, et cetera, are all questions that we're going to answer together. So I think part of the reason why we can't really answer them in full today is because we don't know the answers. And that's part of what this process is designed to uncover through a collaboration with the community.
Thank you. So there's a question about, will the community be able to come to a consensus on the projects, or, is this approved by city officials? So James, do you want to give a little bit more background on, what does the selection process actually look like, and how that is kind of a combination of things?
Yeah, so we're gonna, in terms of how the selection process will unfold, I think we're gonna work with the Alderman's office to have engagement around the proposal. So as I mentioned earlier, once we receive proposals in the late summer, we're gonna have additional engagement to receive feedback from the community, and that engagement is gonna factor into the selection of the winning proposal.
Thanks. There's a few questions about, whether the Park District or Chicago Public Libraries would be able to use this space. Do you want to discuss that a little bit?
I can chime in on, oh, go ahead,
Go
Commissioner.
ahead, go ahead, please.
No, I was just, I could chime in on this one. I think as the commissioner stated earlier, definitely because of the size of the site and just even what we're seeing in the word cloud now, right? Our expectation would be that there would be some open space here. How that's managed, I don't know that we necessarily know the answer to that yet. And at this point, we do have a track record of being able to engage other agencies and other partners like the public libraries to think about how we might program sites. I will say that that's all dependent on, the library's available resources and as well as facilities needs. So that's a question, we are glad to ask and to loop them into the discussion. But yeah, I think that's what we can say now is that we're always glad to kind of have these conversations and explore things if they are a priority for the community.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think Alberto here had a question. He says he owns a window treatment company and is asking if there'll be opportunities to bid on window treatments for this development. Do you just want to talk a little bit about the types of jobs and kind of those requirements or ideals that we hope to include in a project like this?
Yeah, again, I think it might be a little premature to talk about, specific types of jobs that, will result from this effort. It really, again, is going to depend on the types of proposals that we receive.
But I will say one of the really key aspects of this RFP brand is this notion of community wealth building. And ensuring that local businesses, local entrepreneurs are benefiting from the economic opportunity that these developments provide. And that is something that was written into our previous set of RFPs. And we're certainly open and willing to include that here if it's something that the community feels is a priority.
Thank you. Justin has a question about will the RFP responses be made public and just kind of how that information be shared, I think.
Yeah, so they will be made public. We do have a project website and we will publish those proposals on that website. And again, there will be additional engagement opportunities. We'll have meetings regarding those proposals. So yes, they will be made public and there will be additional engagement around those proposals.
Yeah, I think there was a question about, what does that look like? And I know just from experience with some of the Invest Southwest RFPs, we had presentations by the developers once all the proposals were together. So they were virtual presentations that the public could attend and ask questions directly to the developer teams. So I imagine we'll be doing something very similar at the Belmont Triangle. There's a question about, can we integrate a pedestrian-friendly Milwaukee Avenue? And I guess that's a question about how the streets and things work with this project.
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned, with the design guidelines, public realm improvements are definitely a priority. So we do anticipate that there will be public realm improvements as a part of this project.
Yeah, barge in on that for a second. One of our team members, HNTB, is one of the specialties of their firm is exactly that type of analysis of the transportation, parking, pedestrian access, all of that. So it is one of the kind of focus points of the.
Great, thank you, Marky. I think there's a question in terms of, what is the relationship to the city on this land? And do you just want to reiterate a little bit how this is privately owned land versus city-owned land?
Yeah, I take that. I mean, it's very important that we underscore that this is a privately owned property. And with the consent of the owner, who is very interested in the site reflecting the values of the community, they have consented to allow the city to bring forth proposals that they, for their property. It'll remain in private hands. There may be clearly a desire for a public realm, but that public realm would happen within property that is currently privately owned. So there's always a question about what the use of that would be, how big it should be, how many eyes on the streets you can create. And so the size, the shape are all going to be determined in part by what is feasible for it. But we suspect that we know that there will be development on the site, and that development will hopefully support a pedestrian-oriented, vibrant, mixed-use outcome for the site. But the property, what we have is an understanding from the private property owner that they will entertain agreements to sell to the chosen developer or development group. That's the agreement we have.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I think there's again a few questions just about what's next in the process and things. So I'm not sure, James, if there's, we're still working on the schedule of what that's going to look like, but if you have any info on that.
Yeah, so again, we're in the outreach and engagement phase of the process. The next step, the immediate next step is we will be holding a visioning session. We have a tentative date for that session, but we're still working to kind of nail down the details in terms of the location and finalize that information. But that will be provided on our website once we finalize that, and I anticipate that happening next week.
Yes, and if you registered for this webinar, we'll be sure to add you to our email list so that you can keep receiving updates about this process. And we'll also, as James was just saying, post all of the information, the presentation from tonight on chicago.gov/Belmont Triangle. So that hopefully you can share it with your friends and neighbors and invite them along on this process as well. So some questions about would there be zoning changes to this area, or how would that work possibly?
Yeah, so I think, again, that's going to be dependent on the proposals, but because of the size of the site, we can anticipate that this will result in a plan development. So yeah, I can't really get into too many details in terms of zoning and what that looks like, because it's going to be dependent on the proposals and the details of each of the proposals and the proposal that we select. But I think we could anticipate that this will be approved as a plan development.
If I could just add to that, I think James is right. This will likely be a plan development. And I think the way that we approach these efforts is we're, as a city, are certainly open to zoning changes in as much as they are consistent with the vision that comes out of the process, the visioning process with the community, and in as much as they align with that vision. And so I think that's going to be our approach to this site, is what do we all agree makes sense for the site, and then figure out a zoning that is appropriate and respectful of adjacent context to make the vision work essentially.
Thanks. There is kind of a question about, currently the site has a mix of, industry, and so it's a question of whether the site will need to be cleaned in terms of whatever development ends up taking place there.
Yeah, so environmental review definitely will be a part of the development process of this site. I can't speak to whether or not there is remediation that's required at this point, but there will be an environmental review, I would anticipate, as a part of the development process.
Just trying to get through here and see if we had other questions. So, I think this is a good question. What influence over sustainability will we have in these proposals? So, would we make something like LEED certification requirement, or what are kind of our sustainability goals related to this development?
Yeah, so we do have sustainability requirements as part of our zoning process that we would apply to the development of this site. And again, if there are any enhanced sustainability desires from the community, we could potentially incorporate that in the RFP through the visioning session.
There's a few questions as to whether this site is actually in a TIF district or not. Do you, James, have that information?
Yeah, so this site is currently in a TIF district. I can't recall that exact TIF district though.
And I would say the challenge, of course, with TIF, it's only one of a number of financial incentives. And in fact, it has limitations in terms of what expenses are eligible. It's actually not a perfect tool for new construction. So we don't anticipate that there will be a lot of TIF eligible expenses. So effectively, this is going to have to be financially feasible as a private development agreement. But again, TIF is only one of the financial systems. There may be others, and that will emerge as the developers respond to what they see. A number of comments have been made about a library. The library is a part of an assessment, or library needs are part of assessment with our public library commissioner and with the alderman person, and no one has done that assessment yet. We have had libraries proposed in other communities where a funding source had not already been identified, and the administration worked, to try to make something happen. So I think that is an open discussion. I think what I'm hearing is people see a real community center. They'd like to see something public on the site, and a library certainly is that. But I think we would probably want to do a larger assessment of the service area and bring the commissioner of the libraries into the conversation as that program is requested. And I don't know if the alderman wants to add anything to this.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. The fact is that when you utilize a TIF dollar amount for a specific area, as you said, it's not stated for something this large. Not only that, it also entails other aldermen in the area. And at this point, we haven't even discussed it with those aldermen. We want to see what the community needs are for now, and then we can move on that subject later. Doesn't mean it's off the table. We can always discuss this later.
Yeah, and I would also mention in terms of incentives, we, again, once we receive a proposal, we'll review a pro forma with our financial incentives team. And we also have our pro bono assistant or pro bono partners helping us with reviewing financial data related to the site.
Thank you. There's kind of just a few questions about, how do we get proposals for this site? I don't know, Gerardo or Mark, if you just want to talk about how, what is put together, and then, how do we get submissions of proposals from developers?
I can certainly speak to that. The goal of this engagement is for us to essentially develop a vision together with the community for this site. And our pro bono consultants are going to help us test that vision, both from a financial perspective in terms of what's possible, and visualize it graphically. What is the site going to feel like? How is the open space interconnected? How is the architecture engaging with the street, and creating a pedestrian friendly environment? I've seen some comments to that effect in the chat as well. We'll put that vision together into what we call a development manual. So it's essentially a document that really outlines the vision, outlines what's possible, what the city is comfortable with, what the community is comfortable with, and what financial incentives may be available. And essentially we publish that, and we distribute it to developers, designers, architects, really to the public. It's a public document. And we give folks anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks to put together a proposal. And once those proposals are received, we publish them on our website, as we've done in previous iterations. And then we'll have a process of evaluation, both as the city and with the community. So in previous RFPs, one of the things that we're most proud of is that we've actually developed a community evaluator system, where folks from the community basically participated on an evaluation committee with city staff to determine which was the right proposal for the community. And that's essentially the process after the proposal, right? And there's once that proposal is selected, then we go into a community engagement process so the community at large can understand it, provide further feedback, and the project gets refined and gets ready essentially for development. So we're talking about, a multi-month process here, maybe, before we really get to a final development that's ready for, groundbreaking or anything of that sort. And then another process for construction, et cetera.
I'd love to say a couple words just about the pre-promotion of the RFP. One of the things, in addition to putting together the pro bono team, we've publicized this through our network. So we have a robust membership group, and we've got a very large kind of supporter network. And for the next several months, we're actually going out middle of next week is our initial announcement this is occurring. And the development community reads these things, and then they always calendar, okay, we need to think about this. And they start to look. And so the city does a great job of publicizing the RFP once it's issued. And so we try to work to develop a little bit of buzz around the idea that it's coming. And so by the time it comes out, there is a bunch of interest by probably groups of people to kind of fulfill whatever the mission is of that spot. So there's a lot of work that happens that you don't really see, but it brings attention to the process even before the RFP hits the street.
Thank you, Mark. There's a question here about, how do we focus public organizing and communication on this process and with the aldermen, and what kind of transparency will be provided. James or someone else, would you like to go into that a little bit more?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
They're just asking, how can they activate their community to participate in this, and what type of transparency will be available to as this process moves forwards?
Oh, okay. So in terms of participation, I would just say that you can encourage folks to participate in our visioning session, which will be happening at the end of May, and stay engaged through our website and through other engagement opportunities that we will have during this process. And in
I
terms
would
of
also,
transparency, I think, the fact that we are kind of having a community first approach to this is kind of demonstrating our priority around transparency with this project.
I would also add, James, that in each one of the areas where we've released an RFP, we've actually worked closely with the aldermen of that area, because most aldermen have an established process by which they receive input. And so we would design something together with Alderman Raboyes that meets both his criteria as well as the community's criteria for accessibility. And so we work in partnership. This whole effort has been brought about as a result of the partnership with the and so my hope is that we will be able to fold in some of the things we've learned about access with some of the things that he tried and proven in his ward.
And Commissioner, I want to make a statement on that as well. Absolutely. And the other thing is that I want the community to know that this is your project. You're doing it right now by being involved. And we want to stay consistent, because this is what makes this community grow. What you're doing today, we want to see it throughout this entire presentation to move forward. And you're doing just that. Remember, this is not my project. This is your project, and I'm going to help move this forward with your assistance. That's why we need you to stay involved. This is your project. Thank you, Commissioner.
Just going here. So there was questions about, why is this project being referred to as affordable housing rather than mixed use? And I don't think we've necessarily decided on that yet. So Carmen or James, I don't know if you want to go into that.
I think that's right. I don't think that we have, that's not, in terms of, again, we're going through this process now of getting feedback from the community to determine what uses and a preferred development scheme, that could include a number of different types of uses in housing. So I wouldn't necessarily say at this point that, this is going to result in affordable housing development.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, that is, we're not coming to this conversation with any preconceived notion of what this site is supposed to be. If people saw in the word cloud affordable housing come up, that was residents on the call putting it into the word cloud. So it's a signifier that there are people out there who want to make sure that affordability is on the table. But I'm sure if we have a further conversation about market rate and the range of options that people expect to see in this community, it's going to be more inclusive of more housing options, not one single type of housing option. So this is where the community really gets to say, this is what we need to happen on this site. And then, of course, the developers will look at how to deliver that, and they will bring back proposals about how they can deliver that, plus their own notion of how to interpret the community's desires. So we're not, we haven't figured out anything about what should happen on the site. That's what the process that you're engaged in is supposed to reveal.
Okay, I think we should wrap up with the questions in the Q&A box. We're over time, so maybe if there are a few folks who want to speak, if you want to raise your hand to be unmuted.
It looks like Melissa has her hand raised, so I'm going to, Melissa, can you hear us and speak?
Hi, yes, thank you. Um, my camera's unfortunately not working evidently. Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Melissa Toops. I'm the Director of Zoning with the Avondale Neighborhood Association. I want to thank the DPD staff and Commissioner Cox for organizing this. This is a big opportunity for us here in Avondale. As I think someone alluded to in the chat, this is a very opportune time because we have been working with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP, for a neighborhood plan. We actually already had our kickoff meeting where we've established an amazing amount of data that we would love to share with your offices. And I think we've already started a little bit of that process. But it sounds like we're hearing some of the same things from your word cloud: the library, the green space, the public community areas, the affordable housing. My question is really, how can our active community groups get engaged further? Right now, we don't have a formal community engagement process with our community groups here in the 30th Ward. And I know, hearing from several groups in the neighborhood, they very much want to be involved in this project. So how can the community groups specifically get involved?
Go ahead, Carmen.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for your question. I think that, you know, I'm glad you actually brought up CMAP, because that was something that I know we wanted to touch base on today. We're working with CMAP, we're in communication with them, and we're actually having monthly check-ins, and we're trying to figure out a way of how do we continue to provide a space for the community to continue to add their feedback. So we're going to be working and collaborating with CMAP to see if they can also include community input on their live map, where people are able to put in pins, put in comments, put in suggestions. And we're going to have monthly check-ins with their staff and our staff, just to kind of make sure that we're not missing any opportunities. So thank you for bringing that up. And in regard to, you know, how can these organizations participate? I think the best thing that we could get from, you know, from your organizations is making sure that we have people show up and participate, especially in the upcoming workshop that will be an in-person event. You know, the data still being worked out, but the end of May, I mean, we're hoping to get now, so, you know, support from residents and business owners to attend that workshop, so we can actually have live feedback, because all of that information that we're going to gather, it's going to be really helpful for our design team. And I'm not sure if you were in attendance when the meeting first started, but we have CCAC, we have Luke from Design Workshop here. You know, we have other organizations that will be working with us, and that design team is trying to get as much information as they can to help us put like a robust RFP together. So please encourage your organizations to attend, and to, you know, we have also provided our email address as well. You know, today is just the beginning of community engagement, where we're going to continue to, you know, welcome comments and feedback sent to us throughout the process.
Thank you, Carmen. Yeah, we want to make sure that you guys have all the data we've collected too, because it's, you know, there's a lot of need here in Avondale, and so we're excited to see what good can come from this site.
Thank you, Melissa. I don't see any other hands raised. Anyone? Oh, okay, John. Gonna allow you to talk. John, are you there?
I am.
Hello.
How are you? I just had a question. I entered it into the questions as well. Is there going to be a traffic study associated with the development of this site, just for Pulaski and Milwaukee? I know those areas can become congested, especially at these triangular portions of the city.
I can chime in on that. Definitely, given the size of the site and excuse me, as a planned development, you know, a traffic study would probably be required once the development team starts working in earnest towards redeveloping it. I think as part of the visioning process, we'll certainly have our sister agencies at the table, kind of reviewing the site and understanding it in collaboration with our pro bono team. And so, as Mark mentioned earlier, we have DesignWorks and HNTB, which is a very reputable engineering firm that specializes in, you know, public realm transportation planning. And while we won't be able to perform a full traffic study as part of the visioning, with data that we have from our sister agencies with that expertise at the table, we're hoping that that should be able to inform the vision in a positive way. And then obviously once a development, if and when a development is selected, we will be working with that developer's traffic engineer to formulate a full-on traffic study.
Great, John. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. We're very excited to see the proposals come in and see the site, reinvigorated.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to raise their hand? Nicola, I'm going to click you in here. Are you there?
Yes.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Just want to say thank you guys for putting this together. Thank you to Alderman Raboyes and all the city officials. I had a question and a comment. The first question was the South by Southwest program, the developments that we spoke about a lot during this meeting. Have any of them broken ground, and what incentives did the developers get to propose a development there on those sites?
Yeah, I can answer that. Of the 10 sites, we have 3, potentially 4 that are slated to break ground before the end of the year. And these were RFPs that were awarded last year. So just to give you a sense of the timing, and the incentives that those projects received really run the gamut, everything from TIF to historic preservation tax credits, to affordable housing tax credits, to neighborhood opportunity fund, private equity, private debt. So it really does run the gamut, and each project is different. I'm going to use some maybe plannery jargon, but each kind of market, each neighborhood's market conditions are different, and that's going to yield a different proposal for every community. So that's part of the analysis that we do as part of this visioning, is understanding, getting a sense of what the local market can support in terms of square footage of retail, in terms of residential, and getting a sense of how a developer might approach the site, and then seeing how they respond.
Sure. Well, if I may add to that, I would just like to say that I love the community engagement in this. We have a business across the street, Crawford's Food and Spirits, that is directly across the street from this parcel. So, we'd like to see something happen there. And it's beautiful to see the community engagement and the wish lists. I just know from being across the street from this site that it is really, really, really important that something does get built there, where we get residents, where we get apartments, where we get a little bit of vibrancy in that location. Because right now, it's a tough spot right now. And the reality is this, I know the city has put a lot of burden on developers. There are a lot of rules already out there for developers that they have to follow, with the affordability rule that came into place, certain amount of units. And I just want to make sure that developers want to actually build on this site, because I am hearing that in neighborhoods such as ours and large developments like this, they're having trouble penciling these deals together. So as a community, hopefully we can get together and we can get a realistic vision of what we want, and hopefully we get something great. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like Laura, you raised your hand, so I'm gonna click you in. Hello, Laura. It looks like you're on mute, maybe. I think you're still muted. If you want to unmute yourself, we should be able to hear you.
Sorry, that was totally an accident.
Okay, there you are. Okay. Is there any other folks who wanted to raise their hands or have any questions before we wrap up? I think we're good. James, do you want to close us out?
I'm so happy to see so many people participating today. As I mentioned, this is the first of several engagement opportunities for this project. And we hope that you continue to stay engaged with this project. So thank you again. And that concludes tonight's presentation and community meeting.
Thank you. And just a reminder, we'll post all of this recording and materials from tonight at chicago.gov/Belmont Triangle. And we hope to hear more from you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.